Today I'm going to be putting probably the most forgotten about and overlooked version of Godzilla of all time, Fallout New Vegas' Godzilla, against the Godzillasaurus we see in Godzilla -1. I'll be splitting this video into different segments, talking about which stat each one wins in, and determining basically based on those, as well as just different other things that are outside those categories to basically determine who's going to win this. Starting off with size, and there's a pretty clear winner here. The Fallout Godzilla is around 20 feet tall, as he's comparable to super mutant behemoths in height. You can estimate his height to be around 25 feet if he were to stand all the way upright instead of being kind of slouched over, but most of the time he's going to be slouched over anyway, so more likely than not, he's 20 to, at a high end, 25 feet, more likely 20. And as for weight, the highest you can really get him is between 10,000 pounds to 15,000 pounds with a high ball. Personally, I'd lean somewhere in the middle, around 12,000 pounds, as he should be a little bit bigger in a super mutant behemoth, but not by like an insane amount, and super mutant behemoths are usually around 10,000 pounds. As for the Godzillasaurus from Godzilla -1, he's nearly 45 feet, and more likely than not weighs around twice as much as some of the larger theropods. So you can get his weight to somewhere between 30,000 to 40,000 pounds, so significantly more. So that's 1 point for Godzillasaurus. Now when we go to physical strength, this one's a little different. Godzillasaurus shows the ability to pretty casually throw people around like ragdolls, and likely you could calc him above real-life Tyrannosaurus Rex or like a Giganotosaurus, both of which should be very casually wall to even small building, if not large building level, with higher ends. However, I'd most likely put them around small building level, just due to large building level being something most real-life animals can't really get to most of the time. However, that's pretty much around where he caps his large building, due to him just being bigger than those two and likely a lot stronger. However, you can scale Fallout's Godzilla a lot higher. Starting off, he's obviously stronger than people in power armor, who are physically strong enough to just fucking melee monsters as big as Deathclaws, even with melee weapons. Should be physically stronger than most Deathclaws, who are actually usually considered physically stronger than people in power armor. You could scale him even higher and compare him to things as strong as super mutant behemoths, which are easily large building level with higher ends, and possibly even higher, as we see them pretty casually just absolutely massacre things like Deathclaws. So yeah, I'd say more likely than not, you can scale Fallout's Godzilla higher. However, due to his smaller size, it's unlikely he'll be able to get as many hits in with melee weapons. This is also due to the fact that his limbs, including his legs, are not really as designed for combat as a literal dinosaur. So for this, I'd put it as a draw. Godzillasaurus is bigger and has more ways to use his strength. However, the Fallout Godzilla is likely a little bit physically stronger, just due to his verse having a little bit higher scaling on lower ends. Reaction speed is a very one-sided one. We pretty much can see Fallout Godzilla dodge lasers, as even the other weaker versions of his species, those being geckos, no, not the real-life geckos, the Fallout geckos, which are significantly more dangerous and just crazy. They can dodge lasers, and he can do the same thing. You could argue this is inconsistent, but it really isn't. We see normal humans able to dodge lasers in the Fallout verse, and there's robots that are straight up confirmed to be able to dodge lasers, and we know people, and even the geckos that Godzilla is essentially the same thing as, can keep up and fight those. So yes, he has potentially light speed reactions. We also see him dodge plasma, which should be faster than bullets, as well as dodging bullets. -1 Godzillasaurus can't really dodge bullets, at least not intentionally. So yeah, Fallout Godzilla is a lot faster in reaction speed. When it goes to ranged weaponry, it's extremely one-sided. Fallout Godzilla has a fire breath. His fire breath is a lot different than just standard fire, though, due to how it works in-game and how much damage it does. It's able to essentially do the same thing that a laser does in Fallout. Lasers are weird in Fallout because we have in-game showings of it and statements. In-game showings show it disintegrate people, which is very impressive. However, official statements claim it can atomize you. There's very little proof of this, but that is a possibility. We also see plasma basically gooify people, which is definitely impressive, but yeah. His fire breath should somewhat scale to either lasers or plasma just due to its absurd damage in game, and also the fact it should be able to damage things as powerful as death claws and power armor. Power armor can survive a nuclear blast, although the person would still die just due to the fact it's a nuclear blast, but the armor itself can survive that. And Fallout's Godzilla can destroy power armor with his fire breath. So yeah, it's pretty clear his fire breath is extremely, extremely powerful. Meanwhile, -1 is Godzillasaurus. He can throw stuff. He hasn't adapted to use an atomic breath yet, so yeah. Fallout Godzilla is taking this category majorly. It goes to just standard IQ. This is when it gets a little tricky for Fallout's Godzilla. Fallout Godzilla is weird because he should scale to geckos in intelligence, but geckos are kind of bipolar in intelligence. For starters, geckos in Fallout New Vegas have no problem running directly at armed people like insane people, which isn't exactly smart. However, in previous games, some of them are smart enough to use melee weapons like a person would. I mean, you could potentially scale them as high as like an ape or a dolphin, even in intelligence. But at the same time, you got some of the others running at people like an insane, just idiot. However, Godzilla in gameplay seems to be at least somewhat on the smarter side of the gecko intelligence spectrum, as he will stay back and use fire on stronger enemies, and will typically only use melee combat when fighting an opponent that doesn't seem to get affected by his fire. So I wouldn't say he's smart enough to use melee weapons, at least not usually, but he's definitely smarter than the less intelligence versions of his species. When it goes to -1 Godzilla, just in general, he's not the brightest guy on Earth. He's definitely intelligent, but he's also reckless because it's pretty clear he doesn't really think he's killable. Even as Godzilla, he puts himself in situations that could easily kill him and just seems a little overconfident. As Godzillasaurus, he was looking right at a loaded gun that could have potentially killed him, according to some statements, and swam right into a nuclear bomb because I guess he failed to notice that there was a plane flying over him. So yeah, he's not very bright. I wouldn't say he's a complete idiot. He's clearly intelligent. He knows what can hurt him and knows how to deal with it, but I would give the slight edge to Fallout's Godzilla in this category. Durability is a tricky one, as although -1 Godzilla, even as Godzilla, is definitely not the most durable Godzilla out there. I mean, he's been injured by simple naval mines before, so yeah, not great. He does have insane regeneration, which technically would make him more durable, as he would just regenerate anyway. However, Fallout's Godzilla doesn't really need regeneration, at least to the same degree, as he should upscale power armor to a pretty substantial amount, and death claws, which should also upscale most power armor, and power armor can survive a nuclear explosion. Keep in mind, this is a Fallout nuclear bomb, which should be above modern-day nuclear bombs due to the fact that not only does this take place further in the future, but also the fact that the Fallout universe specializes in nuclear weaponry. Meaning that, yeah, they should be able to survive a nuclear bomb. This Godzilla should be able to survive the same nuclear bomb that mutated Godzilla in -1, but he wouldn't even be injured by it, at least not to an insane degree. This is shown pretty well in gameplay, as he's pretty casually shrugging off lasers, plasma, fire, and other stuff with minimal damage. The only thing that really affects him is lightning, and that's only because it kind of stuns him, sort of. It's not like it's doing tons of damage to him. We also can see how powerful he is if he fights a super mutant behemoth, which would also upscale normal power armor and durability, more likely than not. And he could fold a super mutant behemoth almost as well as something like Liberty Prime, who could one-shot them. So yeah, I'd have to give the durability to Fallout's Godzilla as well, as he pretty blatantly upscales things that are arguably as durable, if not more durable, than -1 Godzilla, let alone Godzillasaurus. In terms of battle IQ, this one is likely odd to determine. -1, like I already said, isn't the brightest, but he does show some basic combat knowledge. Like, he knew to go for the plane, even if he did fail to do it. He knew to go after ships that were messing with him. Like, he knows where to attack in order to win a fight. However, he's also reckless, obviously. Godzilla in Fallout, as he doesn't really have any unique intelligence feats at all, other than scaling to other members of his species. Really, you'd have to rely on scaling him to either gameplay or other members of his species, which do show either really good combat knowledge or very poor combat knowledge. As his intelligence should be in the middle, just by how he acts in gameplay, and comparing him to fire geckos, which is the gecko he most closely resembles and is likely just a large member of that particular branch of gecko in the series. It's most likely that he is around -1's combat knowledge, if not a little bit higher, just due to the intelligence gap being just slightly in his favor. So I'd have to give this one to Fallout's Godzilla as well. As for endurance, this one is also very one-sided, but this time for -1. The regeneration basically gives him infinite stamina, due to the fact he'll just come back for anything you hit him with, whereas Fallout's Godzilla, well, definitely not going to give up without a fight. He doesn't exactly have regeneration to fall back on, and thus isn't going to have the same level of endurance that something like -1 would have. In terms of hacks, they tie. It's pretty clear why. One has really good regeneration, the other one has a really good ranged weapon that can pretty much bypass the other's durability. So they both have ways to counter attacks, and both have ways to damage the other and bypass their own hacks. So yeah, they draw in that category. In terms of maneuverability, it goes to Fallout's Godzilla for one major reason. He can jump. I rest my case. With all that out of the way, who would realistically win this fight? Well, I believe Fallout Godzilla actually has this one pretty solidly in his favor. Yes, the Godzillasaurus we see in -1 is almost double his height and likely around double to triple his weight, but that really doesn't matter here. Yes, if he was to bite down on Fallout Godzilla, he could ragdoll him pretty easily. But at the same time, all it takes is one fire breath to completely dismantle -1 Godzillasaurus. Godzillasaurus would have to rely almost entirely on melee attacks, as throwing stuff at Fallout's Godzilla is just not going to go very well for him. Whereas Fallout's Godzilla can stay back and just fire blast him until he's literally nothing but ashes, or possibly even worse if you believe in the Fallout statements that claim that stuff like lasers and plasma in it can atomize you, which I think is a little inconsistent and likely not true, but there are statements that claim that. Fallout's Godzilla could bypass the regeneration, as I've already explained, whereas -1's Godzillasaurus can't really bypass the durability and strength gap. As in order to actually kill or substantially damage Fallout's Godzilla, he'd need to hit him with something stronger than a nuclear bomb. If he wanted to one-shot, in order to consistently hurt him, he's going to have to be damaging him as much as something like a Deathclaw or Super Mutant Behemoth, which, although he's likely somewhat capable of, I don't see him continuously doing it, as he doesn't really have the scaling to back that up. It'd be like him trying to hit his grown-up self, almost, in terms of durability. And even then, I'd say that the Godzilla we see in Fallout is probably more durable than adult -1, just due to how impressive his cross-scaling is. Another issue with this fight is, although we don't ever see it in gameplay, because the Fallout's version of Godzilla isn't even in normal gameplay to spawn him in with commands, probably because he wasn't even originally meant to be in-game, but as he is referenced in newer Bethesda Fallout lore, you can pretty solidly confirm that he is technically sort of canon now, at least to some small degree, or at the very least could exist in canon, or at the very least is somewhat able to exist in the Fallout world to some level. But as he's a gecko, and in Fallout the geckos, which again aren't the real life versions, travel in packs, it's pretty I feel like it would be pretty obvious he'd have some likely fire geckos with him. If he has those with him, well, now he's got backup, and they all shoot fire that isn't as strong as his, but still pretty damn strong, as it can harm fire. It can harm power armor in earlier games and in Fallout New Vegas. So if he has a pack with him, it makes it even less fair. This gets even more unfair when you realize that although -1's Godzillasaurus could definitely beat him with ranged melee attacks, if they're right up on each other, Fallout's Godzilla is likely physically stronger and may even be able to overpower him. So for this, I'm going to have to say Fallout Godzilla pretty much low to mid diffs him, just due to having a better ranged attack, arguably better stats, and likely higher intelligence. Whereas the Godzillasaurus would have an over-reliance on regeneration, which wouldn't really work when his fire breath could bypass the Godzillasaurus's regeneration by basically reducing him to ash. So Fallout Godzilla wins this, in my opinion. If you disagree, you can comment why, but I think it's pretty clear who the winner of this should be. Anyways, see you guys next one.